Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
Anytime democracy itself is placed at risk, it is a responsibility of each member of this body to rise in strong opposition. I do so today, and I urge my colleagues to do likewise. Just under 4 months ago, in 435 separate elections, the men and women we represent in this Congress took part in a democratic process not unlike others that had come before it. Whether on paper ballots or by electronic voting, through absentee ballots or at the polls on Election Day itself, they cast their votes and registered their voices. No one was looking over their shoulders when they did it, and unless they chose to discuss it on their own, no one needed to know for whom they cast their ballots, ever. The privacy and sanctity of the secret ballot is the beauty and the backbone of this democratic process, and it's a right, not a privilege, that has become so customary we probably have grown to take it for granted. The results of the election led to a change in the majority in this chamber and on the other side of the building as well, and we've accepted it because we know when the ballots were cast, they were done so in a way we can all trust, privately and secretly, free from coercion. The people spoke, and as we move through this debate today, let none of us forget this. We are standing on this floor, considering this bill, and ultimately casting our votes at the end of the debate because of the power of the secret ballot. Not one voter signed a card to send us here. None of us sent our campaign workers out to voter houses armed with candidate information, a stack of authorization cards, a pen, and a great or possibly threatening sales pitch. No, we trusted democracy. We trusted the voters to cast their ballots like adults, freely, openly, without intimidation. And we live with the results. So here we are, amazingly, but given the agenda of the new majority and the special interests that helped it get here, not surprisingly, poised to advance legislation to kill a secret ballot process enjoyed by many of the same men and women who sent us here last November. Let's be clear right at the outset. Every American has the right to organize. No one is debating that, even if some on the other side of the aisle would like this debate to be mischaracterized as just that. This is a right we believe in so strongly we've codified it and made it possible for workers to do in the exact same way they elect their president, their representatives to Congress, their governors, their state legislatures, their local governments. That is through a secret ballot. Think about that. So fundamental and so sacred is the right to organize that we have guaranteed and protected it through the same process we elect our commander-in-chief and the 535 men and women who hold the power of the federal purse. For the last 7+ decades, that right has remained firmly intact, and in spite of occasional and admitted difficulties for which the law has built-in safeguards, workers have relied upon it. In the 1950s, about 35% of all workers chose to unionize. In the early 80s, that number slipped to about 20%, and last year it dipped to 12%, and a meager 7% in the private sector alone. However, regardless of the percentage of workers choosing to unionize, regardless of upward or downward trends for organized labor, there has been one constant: the right to a private ballot. And that's really what today's debate is all about. That right is squarely in the crosshairs, and this chamber is about to pull the trigger. Some of us will be tempted to make this a business versus labor debate. Others may equate joining a union through a card check to joining the Republican or Democratic Party, as if a person doesn't join one of those parties with the intention to vote in secret ballot elections that really count. And still others may incorrectly claim that the bill before us still provides the right to a secret ballot, a myth put to rest by a Clinton-appointed National Labor Relations Board official in an education labor subcommittee hearing last month. Those are all distractions to what is really happening today, brimming with hypocrisy and bluster, falsely defending free choice and workers' rights. An untold number of duly elected members of the United States Congress will pull out their voting cards today, cards they are entitled to only because of a secret ballot election held less than 4 months ago, and cast an historic vote against workplace democracy and against the secret ballot. Last month, I took an oath in which I solemnly swore that I would bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States. Madam Chairwoman, because of that oath, I will not be one casting a vote in favor of this bill today, and I urge my colleagues also vote against it. Madam Chairwoman, I yield the balance of my time to the gentleman from Minnesota, and I ask unanimous consent that he be allowed to control the time.
The gentleman from Minnesota will control the time without objection.